Kung Fu versus MMA, which is better? The answer depends on how you define better. Traditional Chinese martial arts are taking a lot of flack lately. It's not helped by the recent challenge fight between the Tai Chi master and the MMA fighter. It's literally blown up on YouTube. Everybody's talking about it, and now there's even a reward offered to beat the MMA fighter. Most of the comments we get argue that Kung Fu is bad because it lacks sparring and real intent. There is a form of combat training derived from traditional Kung Fu and Wushu called San Shao, also known as San Da. San Da training compares equally well to MMA. In my opinion, produces better technical fighters than MMA for one simple reason. San Da fighters train to fight on a raised platform with no cage fence. Fighting on a raised platform means that you have to have better footwork in order to avoid being pushed or thrown over the edge. Another significant characteristic is that San Da fighters are allowed less time in the clinch, which means that they have to throw or take down straight away. There's no relying on the fence to take someone down. So the exchanges in San Da are much faster and more dynamic when compared to MMA. Of course, one major shortfall of San Da is that it lacks the ground and pound of MMA. They would struggle to make the complete transition to MMA without learning a complete submission game. Regardless of this, there's still a clear path for fighting in Kung Fu. In the past, Kung Fu schools would fight barehanded on a lei tai, a raised platform, to see which was the better fighting art. Consider San Da as the modern development of traditional lei tai contests used to test the fighting arts of Kung Fu. Many people say that Chinese martial arts don't work, or that MMA is better, but the truth is the difference is in the training method, the application, and I've often said that. San Da is an example of modern training for a traditional martial art. It's based on the tradition of cross-discipline challenge fighting. Now many of you are going to say, well, if San Da was so good, why don't we see it in the UFC? The most famous San Da fighter to date within the UFC has been Kong Lee. As I said earlier, athletes are not martial artists. The only concern of an athlete is the contest, the winning or the losing. Hence, all too often we see our MMA stars celebrating over the injured opponent or trash talking in order to humiliate their opponent. Now, these aren't values that a martial artist has. Martial arts practice is holistic. Training a martial art means that you learn values that improve your moral thinking. The term fighter, scholar, healer rings true here. A true martial artist can be all or some of these things. An MMA fighter is none of these. Consider Miyamoto Musashi, a famous samurai that wrote the Book of Five Rings. His teachings, derived from real combat, have led the way for many generations to follow. While I love watching MMA, I must say that it doesn't have the moral or social values that martial art has. MMA today is a sophisticated business and a combat sport. It provides inarguably some of the fittest and well-conditioned athletes of all combat sports. However, the key word to note is the term athlete. Even professional athletes. Athletes are not martial artists. This is the technical and the psychological difference between martial arts and MMA today. So what's the takeaway from this? Traditional martial arts have a greater value beyond fighting. Its strength is in its diversity. You can learn to fight with San Da, but what you really achieve is something that will stay with you for the rest of your life. That's yourself. That's a better you. There's value in every martial art. It's just a case of opening your eyes to see the light. Thanks for watching.